Quick introduction here for Tina. Good afternoon, everyone. Tina's invited guest speaker here today from the Phoenix area, Tina Tamboer, but she's actually from the East Coast and moved here from Virginia in 1993, so very smart, escaping the cool weather. She graduated from Virginia Tech with a BS in Finance, so in good company here today. She's been analyzing the Phoenix real estate market for more than 20 years, and we invited her here today, and she's going to drill down and give some examples from the Phoenix market, but to really take a macro look at real estate trends, what are our trends that we need to pay attention to in the retiree population, and just some really interesting things and dynamics that clearly impact our business. Her expertise certainly spans a number of years, and she is a regular guest speaker on a number of local radio stations and some reports such as The Real Estate Show, Real Estate Straight Talk, and she's been a keynote speaker the last several years for Arizona Mortgage Lenders Association. So she's a regular lecturer nationally and also throughout the state here. So we welcome Tina, and I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you, guys. Can everyone hear me all right? I just want to thank you for having me, and I've really enjoyed all of the presentations so far that I've been able to hear, and it sounds to me like you guys have some lovely little safe bubbles for people to escape to. I really am kind of looking forward to maybe visiting some of these places someday, but what I'm here to talk to you about is the scary world outside of that bubble. The bubbles you guys provide are safe, they're fun, every day's a vacation, all of the worries of the world are far behind. That's how I feel after all of these wonderful overviews of these communities. But where are they coming from? And so that's what I'm here to talk to you about. What are they dealing with today? Why should they move? Is it a good time for them to move? And are they even able to? So we're going to talk about some of the news media that they read, and I know that they read them. Do many of your clients read? My in-laws are in their 70s. My mother-in-law still cuts articles out of the paper and mails them to us. Are you okay in Phoenix? We read this today in the paper. So I know that they read them, and they do have a lot of emotions that are tied with going into retirement. So let's just talk about a little bit of this stuff here. What is going to make a retiree move? Performance of their retirement accounts, is that important? Yes. Existing home value, do they have any equity in their home? A lot of them do. A lot of them own their home outright, but can they get enough out of their home to satisfy their needs? And also affordability of homes is a big deal as well. Not just for them, can they afford to move into the community that they're looking at, but can people afford to purchase their home as well? So, and how many buyers are there available? So first of all, let's talk about our stock performance. This is the S&P 500, it's historical. And it looks like our stock performance is doing quite well. It's up as high as it was in 2001. Also in 2000, oops, that was the wrong button. Also here, right around 2008. So stocks have actually done quite well over the past year. And this is the S&P 500 and the Dow Jones Industrial Average over the last year. These are charts that I like to show. This is not only good for your retirees, because hopefully that means that their retirement packages are performing for them, but it is also good if they have a luxury property to sell, because the luxury real estate market follows the stock market, and it also follows corporate profits. So when corporate profits do well, the stock market's doing well, you get the luxury real estate buyer that feels good about making that large real estate purchase. And that's good for your retirees who are living in one of those upper-end households. And I just want to put a shout out to Matt. Thank you for this chart. I had the Case-Shiller on my task list for researching for you guys, and right before I had to do it, he sent over through Lisa these charts. So I've highlighted some of the areas that I know you guys are coming from: AZ, California, DC, Florida, Illinois, Massachusetts, Michigan, Texas, New York, and Washington. So what this is the Case-Shiller Market Index, and it lets you know what the appreciation rates are. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about how Case-Shiller does their analysis, what their index actually measures, because a lot of times people look at this and they're like, oh, appreciation's going great. There's a lot more in that number than what you see. A lot of times when people see this, they think their homes are appreciating by 25%. And guess what? That's not true. A lot of times they find themselves a little disappointed in what they can get for their home because it's 25% from last year, not 10 years ago when they might have purchased their home. But still, what you'll find is in these Case-Shiller indexes, some of the highest percentages of appreciation are in the most depressed markets right now. In terms of the distressed market, in terms of foreclosures, you're seeing a lot, and it's really very ironic to see all of the higher percentages in the areas where people are getting the least amount of money for their home. And this is the Case-Shiller index since 1987. You can see our bubble, the bust, and where we are right now in this little recovery state. We are pretty close to 2008 pricing and also 2004 pricing, but for those retirees who have been living in their home for quite some time, this is 2001, 1999. Sometimes they've been in their home how long? 20 years before they have to sell? And if they're in one of the 55 plus, moving into a 65 plus, sometimes they've been in there 10 years. So we'll talk about what that looks like for them. But this is something to know that even in Phoenix, we're at 2004 pricing and also right around 2008 pricing, nowhere near the bubble price at this point. So in terms of distress, why does the distress market affect your buyer? I'm going to walk over to this side. Why does this affect your buyer? Well, first of all, it affects whether or not their family might be living with them. Their family's under distress. Can they get the amount of money for their home to move into your community? So here are a few states that I know are in our audience, if they're still in our audience today. We've got Massachusetts, has a 9.4% delinquency rate on first home loans. That's pretty high. It's above average. If it's red, it's above the national average. If it's blue, you're below the national average. This is Pennsylvania, 10.7, Maryland, 10.4. DC is actually pretty low. It's around 6% along with Virginia. This is Kentucky, 8.6. Illinois, 10%, Tennessee, right here. You guys, I'm sure you know where you're coming from. And then there's Arizona right here. And Arizona has actually been a great predictor of what some of these other guys might be going through in the future because we're what we call a non-judicial foreclosure state. So you don't need to go through the court systems to have a foreclosure as a bank. So what ended up happening is that we had a big rush of foreclosures. We got through all of them pretty quickly, and now we're already on the way out. However, you've got some of these states in here. These are all judicial foreclosure states, a lot of them. So about half of our country is judicial, and the other half is non-judicial. So if you look at where Phoenix has been, you might be able to figure out where your area is going. Does that make sense? So let's talk about it a little bit more. These are your states. This green line here is the delinquency trend over the since 2009. Arizona is blue. We had 16% in 2010. I never want to relive that time in my life ever again. But this is where we have been. This is the red section here is California. So this is California and Arizona plummeting because they were just moving through all of that distressed inventory. We're now the 8th and 9th lowest states in the nation for delinquency rates. The reason why delinquency rates are important is because you cannot have a foreclosure without a delinquency. And when you have a high number of delinquencies, you have a high number of eventual foreclosures, most likely, or short sales, competing in the market with your buyer who needs to sell their home. It pushes property values down, and it gives you a good idea of who's coming out and who's still in it. So we've got Arizona and California down here. Washington State kind of never really went above the national average. They're right here. And this right here is Montana. This is our national average again. You've got Texas and Missouri coming on down, and Kansas too. So it's always nice to see the states that have below the national average look like they're coming out. But then, sorry, Florida, you are pretty high. As a matter of fact, Florida was the #1 state for many, many years. Until recently, you are now #2. Does anybody want to guess who's #1 now? Mississippi. Actually, yeah, New Jersey's on here. This is your US average. You've got Maryland is in the dark blue. Pennsylvania, and Massachusetts are both these light blues, and right here is Washington, D.C., pretty low. So watch out, Florida's got a long way to go. So that's when we're going to talk about affordability. And this is actually just from 1 month last year, that these headlines really affect how buyers feel about the market, whether or not they can buy, whether or not is it a good time for them? So let's talk about this. How many of you guys are familiar with the HOI put out by the National Association of Home Builders? That's the Housing Opportunity Index. What they measure is the median price of a home versus the median income of the average household. So what this is stating, in August of 2013, Housing Wire announced only 69.3% of homes were deemed affordable. What that means is that you, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, I'm sorry to tell you that you make the median household income, you can only afford over half of the homes. Is that a bad number? No, it's actually a good number, but this is what ended up happening. The next day, DS News comes out, housing affordability drops to a 4-year low. 2 days after that, Wealth Daily, homes aren't affordable. 2 days after that, USA Today, affordability falls with rising prices. 2 days, another week, home prices defy gravity. And by September, 1 month, 4 weeks actually, after this announcement, is housing affordability going down the drain. Can you get more dramatic? So what does that mean? This is the actual index. When you go all the way back, this right here is 1992, I believe. A normal range is between 60 and 68. This is where we've come from. Over 75% nationally for an affordability rate. This is where they announced this horrible, horrible headline about not being affordable. Does that look like it's not affordable? Is it insane when the person making the median household income can afford 77% of the homes that's sold? Is that extremely high? That also tells me that what was the luxury market doing this whole time? Nothing. So as the luxury market recovers, as the stock market recovers, as corporate profits recover, and more people start buying luxury properties, of course they are not affordable to a family making the median household income. So for us to be right here now at 64.7, we are straight there in the normal range. Now, if we get down here to 40%, I would be a little more worried. But this is not something to get worked up about, and I can't tell you how many people are. We still see headlines about how affordability is dropping. Keeps me employed. Then this is how it looks with those metro cities that are represented here today. This is Phoenix and Tucson. This is the LA area. You have the lowest, congratulations, the lowest affordability rate at 20. DC is right here in the middle, and you've got Florida above average. That's not surprising. The more foreclosures you have in your inventory, the more affordable your area is going to be. So when you look at it, here's Massachusetts, Maryland. Almost all of you guys, except for Washington and LA, and this is Massachusetts, right around Boston, are within that normal range for affordability. So is it a good time to buy? I think so. So who is going to buy your client's home? Are they going to be purchased by an investor? Are they going to be purchased by a millennial, first-time home buyer? Boomerang buyers, have you guys heard that term? Boomerang buyers? We'll talk about that. And then there's a special target market that I'm going to save for last. So let's talk about investors. Phoenix had a high investor population out here for quite some time. You can see the percentage. This blue line is single-family purchases by investors. This is condo purchases by investors just for Phoenix. And I just want to point out that Phoenix is a great market, again, because of what is recorded. We have one of the best recording departments for the state in the nation. They've won all kinds of awards. We can actually track number of second home purchases versus investor purchases due to a piece of paper that everyone's required to record called the Affidavit of Value. And so because of that, a data analyst like myself, we have a great time with it. So we can tell you exactly what percentage were investor purchased over a long period of time. And we can tell you that our investor purchases are down over 50% in Phoenix since we reached a certain price point. So where can investors still buy homes at a deep discount? This came out from Yahoo Finance on January 16th, that they have moved to Florida, which I'm sure that's no surprise to many of you who are in Florida, Texas, North Carolina, Georgia, and Tennessee. And the one thing that many of these have in common is that they're non-judicial foreclosure states. Notice that they don't have New Jersey or New York on here, because there are people that are in New Jersey and New York who haven't made a mortgage payment in over 5 years. Maybe they've saved up enough to come to your community, so they haven't made a payment. But they are definitely, when it comes to inventory that is waiting to hit the market, you can expect that to continue through on those. But the investors really do prefer the non-judicial foreclosure states because they don't have redemption periods. You guys familiar with a redemption period? That means after foreclosure, sometimes the buyer has, in some states, they have up to 2 years to pay off that mortgage and take their house back. Or 6 months. It varies by state. But many investors don't like to buy something that's in foreclosure and then find out that they have to give it back. So get kind of put out by that. So that's why they tend to like them. So will the millennials buy their property? For those of you who are wondering what age group that is, right now it's right around 18 to 35. And these are some of the headlines that have come out. Will millennials ever move out? Will millennials ever be homeowners from MSN? August, Yahoo Finance says, the next real estate boom, we're ready, get ready for Gen Y style housing. By November, they're like, you're renters now, but you can't do that forever. And then by January, millennial generation key to the housing market. This was out of Phoenix. Even Canada's like, for the love of God, please buy a new home. We have them here for you. We're counting on you. And what are they doing? That's who's supposed to save our market. These guys. Yeah, they have no intention at this point in time of buying a home. And there's a good reason for it right now when you think of it. This is 2012. I don't think it's any surprise to see the increases of young adults living with their parents in 2012. We just went through one of the worst unemployment times in our country. We peaked in Phoenix in unemployment in 2010. So it makes sense that somebody coming out of college or right out of high school may have had a hard time finding a job, especially in these areas, especially in California too. It's very expensive to live there. But these dark areas are where 38% or more of young adults between 18 and 34 are still living with their parents. Those are the people who you are trying to get to move into your place, right? Or they're at least trying within the next 10 years to move into your place. So right now, they got to kick out their kids in order to move and sell their property, and their kids have nowhere to go. So emotionally, that's going to be very difficult for them. However, the good news is this was 2012. Since then, the job market has been improving, especially here in Phoenix. It has definitely been moving forward. And what that's done is helped the millennial move out of their parents' home and into a rental. But they're not ready to buy yet. So the rental market right now in Phoenix is going great. I mean, if you own any kind of investment property out here, you do not have a problem with demand. They're coming out of their parents' home, they're getting jobs, but they do not have the money to put down a down payment. And often, who would gift a young person their money? Their parents. And what have they been going through? Well, they've been supporting them for so long, feeding them, kind of draining on their income as well. Maybe they even suffered a job loss. So the money, the gift money, is probably not going to be as abundant for those millennials. And then, just to add insult to injury, if they went to school, this is the increase in prices for college tuition and fees, not to mention their books. And this right here is the overall consumer price. So you can see that the cost of a college education has skyrocketed in comparison to just regular inflation. So if that child went to college, first of all, what do some parents do when they want their kid to go to school? They take out a mortgage on their home that they've been paying down for years and years. They refinance, if they can, but how many people had underwater mortgages because of the foreclosure crisis. So what do kids do if their parents can't refinance their home? They take out a loan. And we saw a lot of loans, student loans going delinquent. So the good news that we've been hearing, oh, credit card debt's down. Personal loans, auto and credit cards and home equity loans are all down on delinquency rates. Yeah, we're all excited. But nobody has been talking about this. The student loan, the number of seriously delinquent loans since 2010 have gone up over 75%. And guess what? Of all the loans to go delinquent on, do not go delinquent on a student loan. You cannot discharge it. That's why it's a lot better actually to refinance your house, because no, it's not good, but at least you can let it go. In 7 years, you can get a home. But a student loan, the government can come back and garnish your wages. They never let go of a student loan. So good luck trying to get your student, your millennial who's defaulted on their student loan, a mortgage, as long as that's out there. So this is actually quite serious. I think it's something that we should talk a little bit more about. It'll be interesting to see what our society will do to correct this, because if we have a ton of students going in and getting university educations but don't have the money to pay for other things, they're basically, not all of them are getting engineering degrees. Are they? They're spending like $50,000 and they're coming out, sometimes they don't make as much money as they expect. That's all I'm going to say about that. So that's your millennial, but maybe the boomerang buyer will come back. The boomerang buyer, that is somebody who has suffered a foreclosure or short sale and is in a timeout period. So we peaked in our foreclosures right around 2009 through 2011. So right now, people are thinking, okay, people, you got your credit going, let's go. So the news media is saying boomerang buyers return to the market after foreclosure. Phoenix market sees an increase in boomerang buyers. Boomerang buyers are expected to boost recovery in the new year. This was December of this year. And finally, by January 7th, we really need you. Come on, let's go. What's holding you up? And this is the holdup. The typical wait for a buyer with a short sale or foreclosure in their past. Conventional loans through Freddie Mac or Fannie Mae are 7 years. And also for jumbo financing, 7-year wait. FHA and VA, you only have to wait 3 years for either short sale or deed in lieu. If you have a conventional and you did a deed in lieu instead, you can wait 2 years, but you better have 20% down. So here's the issue. Everyone's excited, yay! They can get in after 3 years with the FHA. You know, in Phoenix, the old FHA limit was $348,000, and that will buy a lot of house here. And in a lot of your states, it'd probably buy a lot of house there. But this December, this is what the government decided, that they were going to reduce the amount, the loan limit for FHA financing from $348 down to $271. So congratulations if your buyer for your community has a property below $300,000, they've got a better chance of selling than if they're above $300,000 to a boomerang buyer. Does that make sense? So these are your areas where they've reduced. Florida, Arizona. We went down quite a bit there. And then this, our last resort, the marijuana refugees. Mom and her 7-year-old daughter become marijuana refugees. Moving for marijuana, what you should know before you should pull up roots. The migration to pot-friendly states for health reasons. Marijuana refugees face real estate challenges, which is true. This might be one of your new marketing tools for your communities. Just saying. You could get both the millennials and the senior population. And I will tell you that when marijuana went legal in Phoenix, the highest usage was in Sun City, our retirement communities. They loved it. They're like, yay, my arthritis feels great. So just saying, just something to consider, a special target market for your area. So this is another thing. Many buyers who do qualify are worried about this, the bubble, the price bubble. So here are some headlines that your clients have been reading. May 1st of 2013, CNBC comes out, this is why we're not in a bubble. By the 29th of May, Yahoo News says, oh my gosh, are we in a bubble? By June 7th, The Economist says, nope, nope, not in a bubble. New Wire says, yeah, what they said, we're not in a bubble. September 10th, CNBC says, oh, we're in a bubble. By September 23rd, Housing Wire says, we are not in a bubble. But by December, Robert Shiller says, yes, we are. By February 2nd, Morgan Stanley says, no, we're not in a bubble. So if this is what your clients are reading, what the buyers for your clients' property are reading, do they really know what's going on? And like I said, there's a lot more to the price indexes than what people realize. And so let's talk about the Case-Shiller index. Bless his heart. I'm going to go back really quick. First thing I want to tell you is that there's nothing wrong with the Case-Shiller index. I know they get a lot of flack. The Case-Shiller index, which I talked about earlier today, they're always about 2 months behind. So they're coming out today in February for December, and they're measuring December back to October. So it's not like there's anything wrong with the index. It's just not as up to date as some of the stuff that we do in-house. The only thing that's wrong with the Case-Shiller is that none of their predictions really seem to come true. And I have an entire slides of those, just in case you guys want them. I save all of their predictions and see if they come through. That's why I don't make predictions. I don't want it to come back on me. So let's talk about how things have progressed in Phoenix. And Phoenix, again, for some of you guys who still have a lot of foreclosures in your area, and you have the investors starting now to leave Phoenix and come into your area, might be what will happen to you. The distressed inventory in 2010, at the very end of 2010, we had over 20,000 properties to choose from. The gray line here is HUD. That's going to be like an FHA foreclosure. The red area is REO. Those are your conventional foreclosures. And the light blue area is your short sale. So they're either in pre-foreclosure or they're about to be foreclosed on, or they're worried that it's going to be foreclosure. Today, over the last 3 years, it's come down 89%. 2,100 available valley-wide. And heaven forbid you want something under 100,000 right now in Phoenix. That's distressed. Better put your hockey mask on, it's going to get ugly. Because it's extremely competitive for the investors who are still here. But this is why a lot of the investors have left Phoenix. There's just nothing left to buy. And there were, in 2012, do you guys remember there were a lot of headlines that came up going, we're going to have another flood of foreclosures. Just wait, we're going to have more. Well, there it is, and it's gone. It was like a ripple out here anyway. And this is what's going on with normal inventory. So this is really where your clients are going to be, if they're in the Phoenix area at least. As you can see, our inventory is a seasonal number, so we always go back 1 year to see where we are. We've seen the competition go up 64% from this week last year. From 14,000 to 23,000. A normal inventory level for Phoenix is 35,000, so this is still below, but it's definitely growing. Normally, we would start to see a turn in this way before now, but it still continues to go up. And this is another thing I want to point out, the composition of what's selling. When you start talking about your sale price and why sale prices in foreclosure areas are going up so significantly, you can see the makeup of what's selling. In 2009 and 2010, 70% of everything that sold was a fire sale. 30 to 40% discount to a normal sale. So if you had somebody who had to sell their home to move into your community, good luck. They are competing with all of this cheap real estate, the same buyers. But over time, they start to gain market share. And over time, as that distressed inventory goes down, all of that investor demand goes with it. Because they are not interested in these blue guys, are they? They are not interested in buying something at market value. So when we started losing our inventory, the investors left. Just not enough to buy. And that's where this is coming out. So this is why we're still in a recovery. And this is what our price line has done. Over the last 10 years, many people state a 3 to 5% appreciation rate as an acceptable appreciation for real estate. If we had not had all of this craziness, we would have continued along this path, hopefully, and we would have been between $143 a square foot and $184. We are still, you could argue, a little underpriced for our market. Does this look like a bubble to you? We still need to go up another 40% to reach the price of our bubble. We are at 2004 and 2008 pricing just like the Case-Shiller index. We have gone up 67% from the bottom, which people think that's a bubble. Is it hard when you drop to $79 a square foot to go up 67% to $127? I'll give you a better example. In Maryvale, one of the hardest hit areas of Phoenix, dollar per square foot went down to $25 a square foot. You could get a home for less than your car. Is it hard to go up 100% when they go up to $50 a square foot? So it's a great headline though, isn't it? Phoenix prices double. Well, it's not that hard when you fall that far to make the big numbers. It's even harder. The bigger your number gets, it's a lot harder to make those big numbers. So that's one of the reasons why they're expecting Phoenix to not do quite as much. And another reason is because of this. This is the price line for a normal non-distressed sale. This is your short sale line, this is your foreclosure line, and this is HUD. Let's talk about Case-Shiller now. The Case-Shiller uses a method where they take the one home, and if it's sold again that year, that's what they measure. If your home is only sold one time in that year, they don't measure that. They only measure homes that are sold twice, and they measure how much the difference is. So if you bought a foreclosure at this will be probably about $90 per square foot, are you going to sell at foreclosure prices? No, you sell up here. So you buy a foreclosure, you flip the property, you make 48%. If you buy a normal house, that's not, you're going to live in it, you're not going to fix it up, you get 7%. That's not nearly as exciting, is it? But you take the number of flipper homes, I hate to call them that, but the number of people who buy the foreclosure, fix it up, and resell it either to another investor for renting out or to somebody who's going to live in it. You've got a combination of these people selling here, buying here and selling here, and a combination of people buying here and selling here. But when the buyers see that in the paper, or the sellers see that in the paper, what do they think? Prices are going up. This is outrageous. That's not sustainable. And when 70%, back here, 70% of our sales were here and only 30% of our sales were there. Today, 80 to 90% of our sales are here and only about 20% are in the lower end. So it's not about just all homes are appreciating at crazy rates. You can have a nice sustainable rate of appreciation, and actually 7% is pretty good. You can have a more reasonable appreciation rate, but when you have more of this in the mix, that's what shows it going up so quickly. Does that make sense? So as this goes away, we can expect to follow this line a little closer. And that's why Phoenix is probably not going to be as exciting next year. And this is why some people might get a little disappointed that they're not getting 15, 20, 35% like the Case-Shiller says. Another reason why, though, we need to talk to the millennials and other people about buying is that this is Phoenix. This is actually your mortgage payment, a principal and interest payment trend that I did based on the dollar per square foot average, 20% down for a 1,900 square foot home, which is the average size home in Phoenix that's bought. In what bubble have we had a mortgage payment for a 1,900 square foot home that was the same as it was a decade ago because of interest rates? So all of our history, all of the headlines, and I have a whole slide of that, but I didn't want to take up all your time. All of the headlines are saying affordability is at its lowest point in 4 years. Do you guys remember that? Maybe just me? All kinds of headlines from everyone. Affordability, mortgages. And they're right. We are at 2008. So it's not like they were lying. They just didn't go back far enough. So we are also at the same mortgage payment that your parents were paying when you couldn't even drink. So in what bubble? Again, the same home would have cost this buyer over $1,900 a month PI at the bubble. Today they're paying $1,000, But because their friends are only paying $600 a month, they're like, that's outrageous. I'm not paying that. That's a bubble. So now what do they believe? Which one of those headlines do they believe? Because now they don't want to pay more than their friends who've been buying over the last 4 years. And that's for those of people who are lenders who are like, oh, I'm really sorry that you were recovering from a short sale here and couldn't get the 3% mortgage rate. But you know, this really isn't that bad. In terms of affordability, we're still very good. And for those of you who are looking at new homes, the new home builders, see, they didn't really drop a whole lot either. The issue with the home building is that it became so cheap in Phoenix to buy a foreclosure that they couldn't build the home for that cheap. So what they did is they didn't focus on the low-end first-time home buyer homes. They focused on the move-up, the pre-luxury and luxury homes. And so that's why you see the median home sale of a new home is much higher. They're also building larger homes too. So in order to maximize the lots, which lots costs went up quite a bit, they decided to build up. So a lot of times these are much larger than your average home here, but it makes it look pretty outrageous. But again, the new home builders, unfortunately, our inventory problem, the low inventory, was not in that price range. So when the investors left and we were left with traditional buyers, they're experiencing a slowdown as well because that price point just has a lot of competition now. Hope I'm doing okay on time. I left my phone over there. But let's talk about the retirement communities. One of the nice things about Phoenix is that we have not one or two, but 3 cities that are age-restricted cities. That lets us give a little bit of a comparison as to how they're doing compared to the rest of our county. And this is the combination. You'll see the first thing I noticed is that there wasn't a lot of foreclosure activity in these areas. And they recovered pretty quickly to levels that they were experiencing from 2002 through 2005. So in terms of these communities, which are kind of your first step, and then they come into your 65 plus communities, they still have a pretty good chance of selling that home. And how did they compare in terms of price? This is both Sun Lakes and Sun City West. And I just want to show you this. We had a peak, but instead of having the drop, they just kind of gradually came down to where they were supposed to be anyway. So they didn't have this. This is Phoenix. That's how it looks like in comparison. You went up and just kind of came back down and said, okay, we'll stay here for a while. And if you look at the long term, that line is probably where they should have been anyway. So in terms of price, these investments are still less volatile to the foreclosure industry. So there's still good areas for you to farm for your move-up community because they have a pretty good chance of selling, and their prices, they, unfortunately, they might have lost a little bit, but they can at least break even. So, and to conclude, and hopefully that wasn't too overwhelming for everyone. But in conclusion, this is where Phoenix is going. Just to point out, this is a bubble. That's our bubble. This is the Cromford Market Index is a measurement of seller advantage versus buyer advantage. It combines both supply and demand to let us know what prices might be doing. It is the very first indicator to move. It moves before anything else. The last indicator to move, just so you know, is sale price. And from this indicator, prices will respond anywhere from 3 to 6 months later. So this is what we use to predict what might happen in the Phoenix market. So at 100, this is considered balanced, where buyers and sellers have equal advantage. Above 100 or above 110 is a seller's advantage, prices will go up. Below 100, prices will go down. And at balance, prices will stabilize. So we've actually been in balance in the Phoenix market since November. So if you count out 3 months, we're due to start seeing some price stabilization. But here's another thing. What is one of the things that boosts demand that might boost that line up? I'm sorry? Jobs. Jobs, exactly. Jobs are good, and we are doing very well in the jobs, but also the availability of financing. We have such tight financing right now that if they loosen it up, it will create a little bit more with demand. However, the only area that has loosened up, which might be good for your clients, is the jumbo market. The jumbo financing was dead in Phoenix for at least 5 years. I mean, it was a barren wasteland. Between 500 and 900,000, those people mostly required loans to get into those types of homes, and over $1 million, they were mostly cash. But now with the reintroduction of jumbo financing over the last year, we're starting to see a recovery over 500,000. So what is that going to do? If you restrict through the Dodd-Frank financing regulations for the lower end, and then you fund through jumbo financing the upper end, what could happen to your overall price line? It will go up, making people think that home values are going up. And all it really did was boost a portion of our segment that has been dead for 5 years. Just like that affordability rate. You'll see the affordability rate come down because the jumbo market or the luxury market is recovering. So you might start to see all kinds of headlines about us being in a bubble, but really we're getting back to where we're supposed to be. So are there any questions? Did I answer them all? So I think we can pretty much conclude at this point, if you start to see any kind of appreciation that's below double digits, that's a good stabilization. It's actually a good number. We like to see that. And just another thing when it comes to sentiment, client sentiment, it's always healthy to have just enough of skepticism in combination with optimism. Because once they get too optimistic, that is the time to get out of real estate. Just telling you that. When it becomes euphoric, get out as fast as you can. And when it becomes abysmal, when people feel like there's no hope, that is the time to buy it. So thank you guys for having me.